While the public celebrated a new royal era, something darker stirred behind palace walls. Catherine, praised as the poised future queen, was fighting a battle no one knew existed, one that could erase her role in history. This wasn't just about crowns or titles, it was personal. It was betrayal. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. From the outside, the monarchy seemed more united than ever, its public image polished, its future secured. Yet behind that polished facade, Catherine was beginning to see the cracks, not in the institution itself, but in her place within it. At recent royal ceremonies, subtle but deliberate changes had begun to emerge. Camilla, once in the background, was now front and center. Seating arrangements were adjusted. Procession orders were quietly revised. Speeches shifted their tone. And yet, Catherine said nothing. She smiled, waved, and played her part. But the weight behind her eyes grew heavier. Behind closed doors, aides whispered about updated protocols, something about a redrafted coronation framework. But no one brought it to Catherine's attention directly. That was the first red flag. Why was the future queen not consulted on matters that concerned her very place in the lineage of the crown? Aides she once trusted were now guarded. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. A chill had entered the palace halls, and it wasn't from the weather. Her marriage to William had long been seen as the monarchy's stabilizing force. Together, they were the heirs of a modern crown, dignified, relatable, and enduring. But even the strongest partnerships can face unseen storms. Catherine, caught between loyalty and legacy, began to feel increasingly isolated. The public adored her, but adoration couldn't stop succession politics. And then came the first whisper, a slip of the tongue from a long-time palace worker. A mention of a Camilla clause, buried in new ceremonial briefings. Catherine, poised as ever, didn't react, but inside, alarm bells rang loud and clear. She began digging not with scandal in mind, but with self-preservation. If roles were being rewritten, if titles were being reshaped, she needed to know, because what began as subtle shifts could end with her being erased from the one moment meant to define her legacy. Beneath the tiaras and the protocol, something was shifting, and Catherine, graceful, composed, and deeply aware, realized she was standing at a crossroads. Either accept the quiet rewriting of her future, or step into the shadows and confront the very forces seeking to sideline her. But what Catherine didn't know, what would send shockwaves through the palace, was that this was no accident. Camilla had a plan, and it was already in motion. Behind every crown is a shadow strategy. While the world debated Diana's legacy and Catherine's grace, Camilla was quietly building alliances, rewriting rituals, and preparing a seismic shift in royal succession ceremonies. She didn't want to fade into royal memory. She wanted to be remembered as the queenmaker. What the public perceived as Camilla's quiet dignity was, in truth, a mask for meticulous maneuvering. Over the years, she had evolved from controversial companion to crowned consort, not by chance, but by calculated steps. Every hand she shook, every gala she attended, every moment she stood just slightly behind Charles, it all served a deeper agenda. She wasn't merely supporting the throne, she was studying it, reshaping it, and quietly asserting control. In private drawing rooms, Camilla held discreet meetings with influential royal aides individuals who managed not only the day-to-day affairs of the crown, but also the traditions that defined its future. These meetings weren't on the official calendar. They didn't appear in court circulars. Yet decisions made in these quiet rooms began echoing through the royal framework. Camilla understood that true power wasn't always about position, it was about perception. And perception, she knew, could be crafted. She began focusing obsessively on the language of ceremony, how a queen is introduced, how her presence is described in official programs, how her role is invoked in the sacred rituals of coronation. She asked questions no queen consort had asked before. She pushed for subtle changes. Phrases like "Her Majesty presides" and "joint legacy" began surfacing in ceremonial drafts. They seemed benign, but together, they formed the outline of a reimagined monarchy, one where Camilla's influence would stretch beyond Charles's reign and into the very symbolism of royal tradition. Then came the leaks. A folder, left unattended on a Kensington courier's desk, revealed startling language in revised ceremonial documents. One paragraph in particular stood out. The Queen Consort shall retain active ceremonial duty in post-succession proceedings in continuity of service. In plain terms, it hinted at Camilla maintaining a central role in William and Catherine's future coronation. Another phrase, scrawled in the margin in familiar handwriting, read, "Ensure legacy is more than symbolic." It was Camilla's voice without her name. A whisper turned into a war cry. What made this move even more dangerous was Charles himself, ever trusting, ever loyal. Camilla, knowing her influence over the king, used his approval to fast-track proposals, brushing them off as ceremonial technicalities. In truth, she was tightening her grip on a future that was supposed to belong to someone else. Simultaneously, public statements from the palace began minimizing references to the Princess of Wales. Press releases became more generic, titles less emphasized. It was gradual, barely noticeable to the casual observer, but to Catherine, it was chillingly deliberate. This wasn't the overreach of an insecure consort, it was the deliberate architecture of a woman unwilling to fade. Camilla wasn't protecting her place, she was expanding it. And Catherine, for all her grace, could no longer ignore the quiet erasure inching its way toward her. Catherine had long played the loyal duchess, but this betrayal forced her to act, and what she uncovered next shook even her to the core. It was a single document buried in the palace archive, tucked behind decades of official protocol. But what Catherine's team found was no mere relic. It was a modern rewrite, meticulously edited, and her name was conspicuously missing. The discovery wasn't planned. It came out of desperation. Catherine, reeling from the eerie silence surrounding her role in future ceremonies, finally instructed her private secretary to conduct a confidential audit of all documentation relating to coronation proceedings. It wasn't an act of paranoia, it was survival. What started as a basic review soon turned into a coded chase. Amid stacks of documents, an envelope marked Confidential, version C, was pulled from a locked drawer, its location deliberately obscured from the central archive index. The manuscript inside bore a chilling signature, one that didn't belong to Charles, William, or any traditional herald. It bore the fingerprints of Camilla. At first glance, it looked like an administrative update, no different from the dozens of ceremonial briefs circulated among staff. But as Catherine read deeper, the implications tore through her like a cold blade. References to Queen Consort ceremonial continuity, new clauses allowing for post-succession presence, and, most shockingly, a directive titled "The Enduring Legacy of Her Majesty," a phrase that had never once been used in previous royal documentation regarding a consort. Camilla's presence was written in with permanence. Catherine's was nowhere to be seen. The moment wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. For a woman who had committed nearly 2 decades to the crown, to be omitted from a document defining the next chapter of the monarchy was a wound that protocol could not cover. Then came the margins. Scribbled in soft pencil, barely legible, were notes attributed to Camilla's private team edits, such as "Insert dual ceremonial acknowledgement," "Her Majesty presides," and, in one scrawled corner, "Strategic omission maintains flexibility." These weren't suggestions. They were surgical removals. Words meant to rewrite not just history, but Catherine's legacy. Her team immediately contacted legal counsel familiar with royal charter rights. Quietly, they explored whether this version could hold ceremonial authority if challenged. The results were murky. No direct violation, no smoking gun, just an intentional vanishing of Catherine's role through soft power and strategic silence. The weight of that moment broke something inside her. Not visibly, never visibly, but in the silence of her quarters, away from the spotlight, and the pomp, Catherine felt the sting of being erased. Not just as a future queen, but as a woman, a mother, and a rightful symbol of continuity. This wasn't an oversight, this was erasure with intent. And Catherine knew now that she wasn't dealing with old royal traditions. She was confronting a modern power play by a woman determined to immortalize herself no matter the cost. But palace documents weren't the only place Camilla's fingerprints lingered. Catherine's next move would lead her straight into enemy territory. Camilla's personal circle. You don't rise in the monarchy alone. Camilla's inner circle wasn't made of noble women and tiaras. It was built with strategists, society influencers, and even former adversaries of Catherine. This wasn't a social circle, it was a fortress. The deeper Catherine dug, the more tangled the web became. What first appeared as isolated decisions, minor ceremonial changes, unexplained omissions were soon revealed to be part of a larger orchestration. Camilla wasn't working alone. She had surrounded herself with a cadre of carefully selected allies. Former courtiers who once served under Charles, now loyal only to her. Retired officials with deep institutional knowledge, suddenly re-emerging at private events. Even a few individuals who had, in past years, publicly criticized Catherine were now turning up on guest lists for Camilla's intimate dinners. It wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. This wasn't about tradition. It was about influence. Camilla had been cultivating relationships not just within the palace walls, but across the invisible web of British high society. She had secured the quiet support of those who advised on royal protocol, those who shaped the very fabric of what was seen, said, and remembered. From clerks drafting ceremonial briefs to media contacts planted in legacy publications, Camilla's reach was strategic and far-reaching. Stories began to emerge in the press, not direct attacks on Catherine, but pieces that redefined the narrative. Terms like modern consort and Camilla's steady hand became recurring themes, subtle erasure masked as admiration. Then, a coded message changed everything. A seasoned journalist, one who had remained neutral for years, reached out to Catherine's team. The message was short. She's redrawing the line. Look at the page margins. It was cryptic, but unmistakably clear to those who understood the silent war unfolding behind palace smiles. Camilla wasn't just expanding her role, she was redrawing the limits of Catherine's, and the lines were closing in. At the heart of this operation were the high society gatherings. Glamorous, curated, and fiercely private, these dinners served more than fine wine and flattery. They were briefings. Camilla ensured the right ears heard the right whispers, often laced with just enough truth to sway opinion. Catherine, once the uncontested jewel of the monarchy's future, was being quietly cast as uncertain, unready, too attached to tradition. The strategy was subtle, undermining, not confronting. It was during this time that Catherine noticed something chilling. Her most trusted allies were growing quiet. Longtime aides, once eager to update her on ceremonial matters, now deferred to external advisors. Friends who had always stood by her began avoiding difficult topics, their loyalties no longer so clear. She was not just fighting for a title, she was fighting for truth in a palace that suddenly felt unfamiliar. She had to question everyone, every meeting, every smile. Trust was disintegrating, and she was running out of people she could rely on. But the truth wouldn't come from whispers. It would explode in a confrontation neither woman expected, and the cameras weren't supposed to be rolling. They thought they were alone. They weren't. In a private corridor meant for floral arrangements and footmen, Catherine and Camilla clashed in a whisper-turned-scream, and a palace mic, still hot from a press event, captured every word. It was meant to be a routine walkthrough. The two women were scheduled for separate briefings, staggered to avoid overlap. But something shifted in the day's schedule, deliberately or by accident, no one could later say, and Catherine turned the corner at precisely the wrong moment. Or, perhaps, the right one. Camilla stood at the far end of the corridor, clipboard in hand, surrounded by two senior aides. As soon as their eyes locked, the room thinned. The tension was suffocating. Years of subtle warfare had led to this moment private, raw, and unavoidable. The exchange began in tones only they could hear. Catherine questioned changes in the ceremonial plan specifically, the ones that continued to exclude her. Camilla, with her practiced calm, responded with a smirk and a phrase that chilled to the bone. Tradition evolves, dear. Get used to it. That wasn't just a dismissal. It was a declaration, a cold assertion that the past was gone, and with it, any version of the monarchy that placed Catherine at its centre. But Catherine had been pushed far enough. And this time, she didn't flinch. She leaned in and, with a voice sharpened by heartbreak and fury, said the words she'd rehearsed only in silence. "You're not rewriting tradition. You're erasing me." What neither of them knew was that the microphone used for earlier media interviews had not been deactivated. An aide had forgotten it in haste, left active on the wall-mounted stand, still linked to a press technician's audio feed. Every word was captured, unfiltered, emotional, explosive, and within hours, it was in the wrong hands. The phrase, "red folder," slipped from Catherine's lips during that clash, a reference Camilla clearly hadn't expected. Her face, reportedly, drained of colour. The folder believed destroyed contained the earliest drafts of the revised coronation protocols, the ones explicitly excluding Catherine. Its reappearance was a sign Catherine had more leverage than Camilla thought. What was once a cold war of silence had now ignited into verbal warfare. An aide, believed to have heard the final echoes of the encounter, did what aides are never supposed to do. He leaked it. Not to his superior, not to the palace office, but straight to the tabloids. Within hours, headlines began tearing across screens and newspapers. Future Queens clash behind palace doors. Red folder bombshell. The hidden coronation rewrite. Camilla versus Catherine. The royal rift goes public. What had been speculation was now a full-blown media storm, and there was no spinning it. Inside the palace, chaos reigned. Damage control meetings were held at midnight, statements were drafted and retracted, loyalty lines blurred. But as Camilla scrambled to reclaim the narrative, Catherine made a bold choice. She disappeared from view. No press, no photos, no public engagements. Not because she was hiding, but because she was preparing. While the monarchy scrambled to control the narrative, Catherine went underground and prepared her final move. She'd been underestimated for years. But Catherine knew the institution better than most. Quietly, she launched Operation Stag, a private effort to safeguard her role, expose the manipulation, and reclaim the future that was rightfully hers. After the explosive corridor confrontation, Catherine vanished from public view, but she wasn't retreating. She was recalibrating. Away from the chaos of flashing cameras and carefully worded palace statements, she assembled a team not of stylists or aides, but of minds, trusted historians with deep knowledge of coronation precedent, legal experts who understood the loopholes buried in royal protocol, and most critically, loyal palace veterans who still believed in what Catherine stood for. They met off-site, in neutral locations, never twice in the same place. They called it Operation Stag, a name chosen for its symbolism: vigilance, strength, and silent defiance. The first task was to reclaim the rulebook. Catherine's team began combing through centuries of ceremonial tradition. They highlighted every passage where her presence should be enshrined, then drafted targeted amendments that locked her into future proceedings. In one critical section, they inserted a clause that mandated the inclusion of the reigning Princess of Wales in all succession ceremonies, framing it as a continuity safeguard. It was subtle, elegant, but definitive. And they did it without palace approval, using internal channels Camilla had long overlooked. It was a masterstroke, hidden in plain sight. Next came the leaks, not reckless or impulsive, but surgical. Catherine's circle reached out to select journalists, those known for integrity, discretion, and deep institutional connections. The information was controlled. Hints of protocol breaches, questions about deleted drafts, implications that someone in the palace was manipulating the coronation framework for personal gain. The goal wasn't scandal, it was pressure. And it worked. Within days, editorials shifted tone. Catherine was no longer the silent sufferer, she was the future monarch fighting for the dignity of the crown. But the boldest moment came not from policy or press, but from William, in a private room. Away from the eyes of even his closest advisors, he recorded a simple vow, one that would never air on television, but would quietly circulate among the inner court. Looking directly into the camera, he spoke the words that had echoed in Catherine's heart for months. "She will be crowned beside me, as my partner, as your queen." That single clip, quietly shown to key figures within the church and parliament, shattered the illusion that Camilla's influence was absolute. Public sympathy, long, quiet and passive, began to swell. Hashtags emerged. Commentators defended Catherine. Even some within Camilla's inner circle began backing away, sensing the tide turning. Operation Stag had done more than protect Catherine's legacy. It had exposed the machinery working against her, and more importantly, reignited belief in her rightful place beside the crown. But the Queen Consort wasn't done yet. With whispers of abdication in the air, Camilla made her boldest and most dangerous move yet. Camilla had played the long game, but now she was going all in. According to insiders, she approached the Archbishop with a request that broke centuries of royal etiquette. She wanted her own ceremonial authority separate from Charles, and beyond Catherine's reach. In a quiet meeting far from the public eye, Camilla requested an audience with the Archbishop of Canterbury. It wasn't unusual on the surface. Consorts often consult clergy for guidance ahead of major events, but this meeting was different. Camilla didn't come seeking clarity. She came demanding precedence. What she proposed was nothing short of radical, a dual legacy coronation model, one that would symbolically cement her contributions to the monarchy through a parallel ceremonial line, an authority structure that would allow her continued influence even after Charles. It was a framework that subtly bypassed Catherine altogether. According to one insider, Camilla referred to it as a co-sovereign presence in tradition, not title. And while the phrasing was careful, the message was clear. She wanted permanent ceremonial space, untethered from her husband and untouched by her stepson's wife. The Archbishop was reportedly taken aback, but not dismissive. Sources claim he was concerned but intrigued, torn between the weight of tradition and the modern pressures reshaping the monarchy. The Church, after all, had always been tightly interwoven with royal rights, and in recent years, its authority had waned. Camilla's offer hinted at a renewed partnership, one that restored clerical relevance, in exchange for a reshaped monarchy. But what she was asking had no precedent, no legal framework, and no approval. That ambiguity was her shield and her weapon. The title of Queen Consort had always been ceremonial, but Camilla was quietly testing its outer limits. Could tradition be redefined without Parliament? Could ceremonial language be altered without constitutional review? The lawyers couldn't agree. The Crown's advisors were split. The moment he was briefed, fury replaced diplomacy. This wasn't just political maneuvering anymore, it was a direct challenge to his future wife's role. Catherine had endured, remained loyal, and upheld the dignity of her position while others chipped away at her legacy. William saw Camilla's move for what it truly was, an act of deliberate exclusion, and he was done playing neutral. Behind closed doors, the royal household called an emergency session with senior advisors. The agenda was simple but damning. Should Camilla's influence be allowed to split the monarchy's symbolic power in two? The debate was fierce. On one side, those who argued for evolution, adaptation, and appeasement. On the other, traditionalists and loyalists who believed the institution was being hijacked for personal legacy. A secret vote was held. The results were never made public. But the tone inside the palace changed overnight. Camilla's appearances became more subdued. Her press briefings were trimmed. Whispers suggested the decision hadn't gone her way, but she wasn't backing down. Not yet. The monarchy was fracturing behind velvet curtains, and as secrets surfaced, the Queen's shadow loomed. Elizabeth's hidden letters were about to change everything. Before her passing, Queen Elizabeth wrote 6 letters, one for each key royal. Only 5 were made public. The 6th was addressed to Catherine. Locked in Windsor's vault, it carried a prophecy and a warning Camilla never saw coming. The letter had sat untouched for months, catalogued under restricted access, its existence known only to the Queen's most trusted archivist and the solicitor she'd chosen decades ago. It was marked simply, to be opened by Catherine, Princess of Wales, in a time of uncertainty. And that time had arrived. As tensions within the monarchy boiled and allegiances fractured behind the scenes, Catherine received word that the final letter had been authorized for her eyes only. She travelled in secret to Windsor, no press, no aides, just a woman seeking answers from the only figure whose shadow still held power over the living monarchs. The Queen. Inside the envelope was a single page, handwritten, precise, and devastating in its clarity. Elizabeth began not with protocol, but emotion. She referenced Diana. "Your grace must never be silence in disguise. Let it be strength." She mentioned William. "His crown will be tested. Your presence is its weight." But it was the next line that shook Catherine to her core. "You must protect the crown from division, from legacy without loyalty, from presence without purpose." It was a direct reference to the growing fracture one Catherine now knew the late Queen had anticipated. But the letter wasn't just a warning. It carried a sign, a private instruction only a true successor would understand. Elizabeth referenced a ceremonial jewel, the Queen's heart brooch, a rarely seen piece believed to have vanished with the Queen Mother. It hadn't. It had been safeguarded, waiting to be passed on. Not to the consort of a reigning king, but to the woman destined to complete the crown's continuity. A consort of principle, not ambition, and with that symbol came a subtle but thunderous transfer of silent authority. When Catherine returned to the public eye days later, she wore the brooch. Few recognized it. Fewer still understood its meaning. But among the inner circle, those who tracked lineage, heritage, and ceremonial code, it was a declaration, a shot across the bow. The Queen's choice had been made, and it wasn't Camilla. The press speculated wildly. Photos were analysed, headlines questioned what Catherine was signalling. But those who mattered didn't need interpretation. The Queen had spoken from beyond. She had placed her final bet not on the woman sitting beside the throne, but the one destined to stand at its side in the years to come. And with that single appearance, Catherine didn't just reclaim her place. She reactivated an invisible current of loyalty that had long gone dormant within the institution. The vault had been opened, the truth had been acknowledged, and now, the world was watching her differently, not as a princess waiting her turn, but as a queen in waiting with history at her back. But the war for the crown wasn't won in letters. It was decided in the court of public opinion, and Catherine was about to flip the narrative on its head. She wasn't supposed to speak, but Catherine stepped in front of the cameras not as a duchess, not as a princess, but as a woman betrayed, a mother defending her legacy, and the future queen this nation needed. What she said changed everything. The palace had tried to contain it. Behind-the-scenes meetings, back-channel calls, and desperate attempts to redirect the headlines had all failed. The public was restless, the press relentless, and within the walls of the monarchy, tension had reached a breaking point. And then, unannounced, Catherine stepped forward. The press corps was summoned for a special edition of the Crown and Country broadcast. No agenda, no prior statement, just one figure seated before a quiet backdrop of royal history. But this wasn't a royal performance. This was a reckoning. Her voice was steady, but her words cut deep. Without naming names, Catherine laid bare the manipulation that had consumed the institution. She spoke of loyalty twisted into leverage, of ceremony distorted for personal legacy, and of the silent battles waged behind palace doors. Her tone was not angry, it was resolute. She didn't plead for her place. She claimed it. And then came the line that echoed around the world. Tradition is not inherited, it is earned. It was a shot of defiance and dignity, a message to the monarchy, to the public, and to those who had tried to push her into the background. She was not going anywhere. Within hours, the response was seismic. Social media exploded with support. Hashtags trended across continents. Number Catherine our Queen. Number Stand with the Crown. Number The future is her. Editorials that once played cautious now roared in defense of the woman who had remained dignified while the palace swirled in chaos. Even her harshest critics acknowledged what had just happened. Catherine had shifted the balance of power without needing a title, a throne, or a crown on her head. She had spoken with truth, and truth, in that moment, was mightier than bloodlines. And as the world rallied behind her, Camilla receded. Official palace communications cited health-related fatigue for her sudden withdrawal from ceremonial duties. No denials, no interviews, just silence. Behind the scenes, sources confirmed that Camilla's advisors had urged her to step back, fearing the public backlash could erode not just her legacy, but the entire monarchy's credibility. The woman who had once tried to rewrite royal ritual now found herself written out by the court of public conscience. Catherine, meanwhile, emerged stronger than ever. When she next appeared beside William at a state event, she didn't just stand there as a consort, she stood as an equal. The past no longer loomed over her, it bowed. There was no formal declaration, no grand coronation yet, but in the eyes of the nation, she had already become the queen she was destined to be. The monarchy endured, but it had been rewritten not by the queen consort's pen, but by the resolve of a woman who refused to be erased. Catherine didn't just protect her role, she redefined what a queen could be. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.